This is EXOcars VR, a made-for-VR buggy racing game that looks to offer up some MotorStorm-esque excitement across all the major VR platforms. Not to be confused with EXOcross from the developers of iRacing, EXOcars instead comes from VR studio EXOcars, who previously made the VR racing games Z-Race and Omega Pilot over on the PC. I have put this game through its paces across the PC and Quest 3 versions, and I even tested out the wheel support that will be on the PC and PSVR 2 versions. So stick around and I'll let you know how it stacks up against other VR racers. Hey guys, it's Chris from the VR Grid and welcome to the channel. If you like this video, give it a like for us, and if you're interested in more VR content, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss new videos as they drop. And if you're looking to join our VR conversations, please feel free to leave a comment, or even better, join us each and every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific here for the Virtual Boys podcast. Jumping right into the gameplay side of things, I would describe EXOcars as a VR racer with some rally sim aspirations that is held back by a collection of control options that all have their own drawbacks. Booting up the game, players are greeted with 3 ways to play, the primary one of which is career mode, which I won't lie, is a pretty bare bones affair. As there really is only one basic buggy to choose from, players can customize the colors of their vehicle, the frame, the tires, as well as their helmet and gloves. From here, you simply choose a course and try to place in the top 3 in order to unlock the next course or variation. EXOcars has a total of 9 different courses, with a slew of variations that mix things up, with different times of day and weather, in addition to playing them backwards or mirrored. This brings the total playable tracks up to 25, which considering the game's early access vibes is actually not that bad. Now, in addition to unlocking new courses, players also earn cash rewards, which can be used to unlock new vehicle, helmet, and glove skins. Yay! But I'm sure you're asking, how does it actually perform as a racing game? And well, it's okay, with the potential to actually be a pretty fun little racing game if the developers can iron out some of the jank. Like I said, go into this with the idea of that you're going to play an arcade buggy racer and not the next dirt rally, and you'll likely have a good time here. With a focus on arcade style drifts and ramp jumping, EXOcars wants desperately to be the best arcade racing game that you never got in the arcade. Different terrain can feel different, but racing on tarmac versus dirt offers up only a slight difference, and once you master the ability to drift the back end around corners, you'll be winning races. EXOcars at its best could be a quick, bouncy, and drifty rip, with some genuinely decent and fun courses. Unfortunately, when it's not at its best, it can be a janky mess, with some weird collision physics, some pretty generic and awkward track designs, and control systems that all seem to fight me in one way or another. Now, the game offers up 3 different ways to control the car, the first of which is using the left analog stick to turn. Acceleration and braking is handled by the triggers here, and the handbrake can be pulled by pressing a face button. This worked out alright, but the sticks are so sensitive that it often felt like I was playing a racing game from the PS1 days and using a D-pad to make quick left or right corrections. Additionally, it's weird not seeing my hands on the wheel. There are dead zone and sensitivity adjustments in the menu, and I played with those a little bit, making it better, but by default this was a little rough. Next up is what I think many will use, and that is physically grabbing the wheel with one or both hands, with the triggers again handling the gas and brake. This was actually my preferred way to play, but holding my hands up without something to rest on did make for some tired arms after a few races. Now, I won't hold my little T-Rex arms against the game, but you do need to make sure your hands are up high enough so the headset can properly track them. However, my biggest issue here was that when turning hard left or right, this method had a tendency to actually lock up the wheel, which drove me crazy. Finally, for PC and PSVR 2 users, there is wheel support, and I use that term very loosely, for while the game did recognize my wheel and pedals and let me use them, the implementation here is pretty brutal. First off, for those with force feedback wheels, there's no force feedback here at all, and wheel adjustments to turn were incredibly small, often feeling like I was using at best a 90-degree turning radius in total. I did like that my clutch pedal was the handbrake by default, but wheel and pedal settings and bindings are non-existent. And speaking of wheel and pedal settings, for those hoping to play with a manual gearbox, that is just not a thing here, as EXOcars is automatic only across all the different control methods. Control method issues aside, I managed to unlock the 9 different courses in under 45 minutes. The races in career mode are a pretty lackluster experience despite some of the courses actually being pretty fun. Races are only either 1 or 2 laps depending on the length of the course and are often over in less than 5 minutes. However, what really holds the racing back here is that the game actually doesn't have its own AI system, and instead relies on asynchronous multiplayer to fill in the racing slots with opponents made up of other racers' previous attempts. Essentially, this means you are always racing against the ghosts of other racers. Supposedly, players will be ranked and matched with similar racers, but my experience based on the handful of content creators and playtesters that had actually played the game, it ranged from pretty competitive all the way to racers going backwards on the course. Racing ghosts also meant there was never contact with other players, and this made the career mode feel a little half-baked, even if I did get a few good races out of it. Thankfully, there is a competitive online mode, and that is cross-platform, so you can get a group of friends together to race. Here, with in-game chat and the ability to actually get impact and hit your fellow online racers, I think this is where the game will have its biggest lasting appeal. Online mode also adds in a combat mode, and while this does feel a little tacked on, the ability to drive over weapons and blow up friends was still a nice addition and made for some good laughs. The game's final mode is called Tournament, and this sounds like it's going to change up weekly and is really just a single course pulled from the career mode and tracked through an online leaderboard. Unfortunately, this is also using asynchronous multiplayer ghosts and really offers nothing new from what you get in the career mode. Now, graphics wise, EXOcars is actually pretty decent looking, despite at times looking a little generic. That being said, Quest 3 owners are easily getting the best looking racer available on the headset. Now, while we didn't get access to the delayed PSVR 2 version, we did play the PC version. Frustratingly though, the PC version had locked levels of graphical settings, with all the highest settings being grayed out during our review time, and we just got access to the complete build while I was writing this review. I did manage to grab some footage though at the last minute, so you will see it sprinkled in here to see how the game looks in all its glories. As it is, we were able to run it on the game's high preset for most of our time with it, and the result is a game, when compared to the Quest version, is one that has slightly more detailed textures, better draw distance, and improved lighting across the board. The game looks decent on PC, but it does suffer from some muddy textures off in the distance and some less than spectacular particle effects with all the dirt flying around. Now, being able to run the PC version at max with all the effects on, the result is indeed a much prettier game, with the biggest improvements definitely being felt in the lighting and shadow departments. The dust does seem to look a bit better, but it's still not to the effect seen in the trailer. Otherwise, the game looked sharper for sure, it still ran silky smooth, and textures are improved, but there is still some texture drop off when looking out in the distance. Overall, I gotta say though, the PC version, pretty decent looking title that when maxed out, it definitely exceeds its indie game roots. Now for the PSVR 2 version, we are waiting for it to get through Sony's certification process, so I'll see if I can convince Ryan to do a side-by-side for all of you when the PSVR 2 version drops. Now, the Quest 3 version on the other hand, when compared to the few racers available on the mobile headset, is actually pretty impressive. It runs smooth and retains much of the look of that PC version. The game still features the fully functioning suspension system, it looks sharp in the headset, and it just doesn't look as questy as I thought it would. I should mention that this is also coming to the Quest 2 at launch, and while we didn't test that version, the Quest 3 does see upgraded visuals in the form of higher rendering scale, improved textures, and an overall sharper look. Sound-wise, EXOcars unfortunately feels incredibly budget. From its bare-bone audio design, artificial sounding engines, and generic rent-a-rock soundtrack, everything here is just serviceable at best. Didn't make my ears bleed, but it always reminded me that I was playing an indie racing game.
2, 1, go!
And that brings me to my final thoughts and review score. When EXOcars was first announced, I was skeptical if this small developer was up to the task of creating a decent multi-platform off-road racing title. I knew they had dabbled in VR racing games before, but they were only okay at best. EXOcars is, in my opinion, their best racing game to date, but it still feels like an early access title made on a budget. Fortunately though, if they can iron out some of the control issues, there is still a fun racing game here that actually requires some skill in order to get good. This depth of racing gameplay combined with arcade fun and an online multiplayer across all platforms, and I could see this keeping players interested and earning a place in racing fans' libraries. That being said, I do think the appeal of this game will depend on what platform you are on. For if you're on PC and PSVR 2, you have other racing games to choose from that are vastly superior. I still think this has its place on those platforms though, as they lack much in the way of decent arcade pickup and race games. However, for Quest owners, you essentially have the craptacular Grid Legends and little else outside of a few cute kart racers. Therefore, if you love racing games and only have a Quest, my recommendation to pick this up is a little bit higher. The VR Grid gives EXOcars a 6.5 out of 10. Now, looking at the game's roadmap, developer EXOcars is looking to drop a major tournament on November 28th, 2024, with prizes from Kiwi Design and other rewards. Players can also look forward to a new buggy type with unique physics, a fresh multiplayer mode, and new biomes with unique tracks. I don't know when this is all coming, but it gives me hope that EXOcars will continue to get better, so let's hope they continue to work on this game moving forward. Anyways guys, that's it from us. Hit that like button if you like this video, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, I will catch you on the next video.